I almost dropped my coffee when I saw his name on the email. Please welcome our new regional director, Jeffrey Collins. I stared at the screen like it had personally offended me. Jeffrey Collins. There are some names you don't forget. Even if you try. Even if you spend years pretending they don't still echo in your head at random moments. Like when you're in the shower or lying awake at 2 a.m. thinking about every decision you ever made. Jeffrey wasn't just some guy from my past. He was the guy. The one I never told anyone about. Not my friends. Not my ex. Not even my therapist when I briefly tried therapy and bailed after 3 sessions because I didn't vibe with it. And now he was going to be my boss. I leaned back in my office chair, heart pounding in a way that felt embarrassingly dramatic for a Tuesday morning. It had been 6 years. 6 years since I'd last seen him in person. 6 years since the last night we were alone together. 6 years since I left without saying goodbye. And now the universe decided that wasn't awkward enough. For context, I'm Eric, 31, marketing analyst. Chronically overthinks everything. I'd been with this company for almost 4 years. Stable job, decent pay, predictable life, which is exactly how I liked it. No chaos, no surprises. Until Jeffrey. Back then, we weren't co-workers. We were roommates. Well, technically, I just moved to the city after college. Broke, nervous, freshly out to a handful of people but not exactly waving a rainbow flag around either. I found a cheap apartment listing online. 2-bedroom, decent area. Already occupied by a young professional, easygoing, works in finance. That was Jeffrey. He opened the door the first time we met wearing a white button-down with the sleeves rolled up and a stupidly polite smile. "Eric?" he asked. "Yeah." "Jeffrey, come in." I remember thinking 2 things immediately. 1, he was way hotter than his blurry profile picture suggested. And 2, this was going to be a problem. He had that clean-cut finance guy look. Dark hair always styled but not like he tried too hard. Sharp jaw. Calm. Steady eyes that made you feel like he was actually listening when you talked. He gave me a tour of the apartment like he was selling it. Explained the utilities, the cleaning schedule, how he liked the kitchen organized. "I'm not uptight," he said at one point, smiling slightly. "I just appreciate structure." I should have known right there. Structure. Jeffrey lived by it. We moved in together a week later. First, it was easy. We were both busy. I started my entry-level marketing job, and he worked long hours at his firm. Sometimes we'd just pass each other in the kitchen, exchanging tired nods while reheating leftovers. But then it shifted. Started small. Late-night conversations on the couch. Sharing a bottle of wine just to unwind. Him asking questions that went deeper than surface-level small talk. "So," he asked one night, feet propped up on the coffee table, "are you seeing anyone?" I shrugged, pretending not to care. "Not really." "You?" He shook his head. "Work's been my entire personality lately." There was something in the way he said it. Like that wasn't entirely true. A few weeks later, he walked in on me mid-argument with a guy I'd been casually seeing. The guy stormed out, slamming the door. Jeffrey stood in the hallway, tie loosened, watching me. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I muttered. "Just bad taste in men." He huffed a quiet laugh. "Maybe your taste isn't the problem." I looked up at him then, really looked at him, and something passed between us. That was the night everything changed. We didn't talk about it. Not directly. But after that, the energy shifted. He'd linger in doorways. He was straight. He had to be. Except, there were no girlfriends. No late-night phone calls. No random heels by the door. Just him. And me. I'd fallen half asleep, head tilted back. "Eric," he said softly. "Yeah." His hand slid from my wrist to my palm. And then he laced our fingers together. My heart nearly exploded out of my chest. We didn't look at each other for a full minute. Just sat there, holding hands like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Jeffrey," I started. "I know," he said quietly. For months, we existed in this strange in-between. Roommates in public. Something else behind closed doors. No one knew. He never labeled it. Never said the word boyfriend. Never said he was gay. Or bi. Or anything. But every night he chose my room. Until the night he didn't. I came home early from work and found him in the kitchen with a woman I'd never seen before. Tall, polished, laughing at something he said. He introduced me like nothing was different. Eric, this is Melissa. We work together. I felt stupidly blindsided. Not because he owed me anything officially, but because I thought what we had meant more than this. That night I waited. He didn't knock on my door. The next night, he told me, calm, measured, that it was complicated, and that his career couldn't handle distractions. Distractions. That's what I was. I moved out 2 weeks later. We never talked about it properly. Never fought. Never closed the door fully. I just left. And now, 6 years later, he was about to walk into my office as my boss. I thought I'd buried that part of my life. Turns out it just got promoted. And I had no idea if I was ready to see him again. But tomorrow at 9 a.m., I wouldn't have a choice. I didn't sleep that night. I tried. I really did. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying memories I hadn't touched in years like they were files I'd carefully archived and labeled Do Not Open. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him standing in my kitchen again. Calm, composed, choosing someone else without ever actually saying the words. By the time my alarm went off, I was already exhausted. I dressed with more intention than usual. Button down instead of a sweater. Actual shoes instead of sneakers. If Jeffrey Collins was going to be my boss, I wasn't giving him the satisfaction of seeing me look rattled. At 8:55 a.m., the office buzz shifted. People started hovering near the conference room like something important was about to happen. Is he hot? Someone whispered behind me. I heard he's intense, another voice replied. I kept my eyes on my screen, fingers frozen above the keyboard. Then I heard his voice, calm, even, exactly the same. Good morning, everyone. My stomach dropped. I didn't turn around right away. I didn't trust myself to. I listened instead, him introducing himself, thanking everyone for their hard work, saying all the right corporate things with that effortless confidence that used to undo me. When I finally looked up, our eyes met. Just for a second. That was all it took. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, recognition, something sharper underneath. He recovered instantly. Of course he did. Jeffrey was always good at control. Eric, he said a few minutes later, scanning the room as if he were just now noticing me. Right? Yeah, I replied, standing automatically when he approached my desk. Welcome aboard. He smiled. Professional. Polite. Good to see you again. Again. Like we just bumped into each other at a conference once. Like he hadn't memorized the way I took my coffee or the scar on my shoulder from a stupid college accident. Didn't realize you worked here, he added. I held his gaze. Didn't realize you'd be my boss. There it was. The unspoken history sitting between us like a live wire. Well, he said smoothly, lowering his voice just enough that no one else could hear. Small world. I forced a smile. Yeah, guess so. The meeting started, and I spent the next hour pretending to take notes while my brain screamed. He was exactly the same, and different in ways that made it worse. More polished, slightly older, lines near his eyes that hadn't been there before. Authority sat on him naturally. After the meeting, people lingered, eager to make impressions. I stayed seated, hoping he'd get distracted and move on. He didn't. Eric, he said again, can I grab you for a minute? Of course he could. We walked to a small conference room and closed the door. The second it shut, the air changed. Neither of us spoke right away. So, he said finally, folding his arms, this is unexpected. You think. I shot back, then immediately regretted the edge in my voice. He studied me for a moment, not like a boss, like he was trying to read between the lines of who I'd become. You look good, he said quietly. I laughed once, sharp. Don't. I mean it. That doesn't help, I replied. Not now. He nodded, accepting the boundary. Always respectful on the surface. That used to be one of the things I liked about him. I want to be clear, he said. I'm not here to make things uncomfortable. Then what are you here to do? I asked. Work, he said simply. Same as you. I searched his face for something, regret, maybe, an apology that was 6 years late. I didn't see it. What happened back then, he continued carefully, was complicated. There's that word again, I muttered. His jaw tightened. I didn't handle it well. That was the closest I was going to get. Look, he said, if you'd rather be moved to a different team, I understand. I shook my head immediately. No, I earned my place here. I'm not running away again. Something softened in his expression at that. All right, he said. Then we keep this professional. Agreed. He opened the door, then paused. For what it's worth, he added, not turning around, I never forgot you. I didn't respond, because the worst part, neither had I, and as he walked back into the office, I realized something unsettling. Seeing Jeffrey again didn't just reopen an old chapter. It made me wonder if we'd ever really finished the story in the first place. The first week was torture. Not dramatic, explosive torture. Quiet torture. The kind where nothing technically happens, but everything feels loaded. Jeffrey didn't treat me differently. If anything, he was almost overly neutral. In meetings, he addressed me the same way he did everyone else. When he gave feedback on my reports, it was sharp but fair. Your projections are solid, he said during one-on-one, flipping through my presentation. But you're underselling your conclusions. Don't soften your impact. I blinked at him. 6 years ago, he told me I was too careful with my feelings too. Some things didn't change. Got it, I replied. Our one-on-ones were the worst part. 30 minutes in a glass-walled office, pretending there wasn't history sitting in the empty chair between us. He never crossed a line. Not once. But sometimes I'd catch him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. Like he was comparing the version of me in front of him to the one he remembered. And the worst part? I was doing the same thing. By Thursday, the office gossip machine had shifted focus from new hot boss to new intense boss. He's kind of intimidating. Jenna from sales whispered while we waited for the elevator. Yeah, I said carefully. He's structured. She laughed. That's one word for it. Structured. I almost smiled. Friday afternoon, everything cracked. We were staying late to finalize a pitch deck for a client presentation Monday morning. Most of the team had cleared out by 7, but I was still at my desk, revising slides for the third time. Jeffrey stepped out of his office. You're still here. Yeah. Wanted to tighten up the numbers on slide 12. He walked over, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. Shouldn't have affected me. Show me, he said. I explained the adjustment, trying to focus on the data instead of the fact that I could feel his presence like a physical weight. Good catch. You don't have to stay this late, he added. I don't mind. He was quiet for a second. You always did overcompensate when you cared about something. That did it. I turned in my chair to face him fully. This isn't about you. I didn't say it was. But you meant it. His eyes held mine steadily. I meant, he said calmly, that you push yourself harder than anyone here. It's one of the reasons you're good at what you do. The tension in my chest didn't ease. Why are you really here, Jeffrey? His expression shifted just slightly. For work. Not in this building, I said. In this city. You could have transferred anywhere. A beat of silence. You think I moved here because of you? I don't know, I admitted. Did you? He straightened slowly. I didn't know you worked here until HR sent me the team list. Convenient. You really think I'd manipulate my career for some dramatic reunion? His tone wasn't angry, just steady. I don't know what you're capable of. I shot back. Last time I thought I did. I was wrong. That landed. His jaw tightened. You left, he said quietly. I stared at him. You chose someone else. I chose safety. That's worse. The words hung between us. For the first time since he arrived, the professional mask cracked. You think that was easy for me? He asked, voice lower now. You think I didn't? He stopped himself. Didn't what? I pressed. His eyes flicked toward the empty office floor around us. This isn't the place. Then when is? My voice was sharper than I intended. 6 years ago, you didn't give me a place either. You just decided it was over. He stepped back slightly, putting physical distance between us. I was on track for a partnership, he said. My entire career depended on perception. My family. I know. I cut in. You needed structure. He exhaled slowly. You weren't a distraction, Eric. Could have fooled me. You were the first real thing I'd ever. He stopped again, jaw clenching. I panicked. The honesty hit harder than I expected. Melissa wasn't about love, he continued. She was about control, about proving something. And I was what? I asked. His eyes softened in a way that made my stomach twist. You were the one thing I couldn't control. Silence. Heavy. Charged. I waited, I said quietly. That night, after I saw you with her, I waited for you to come talk to me. I know. But you didn't. No. Why? He held my gaze. Because if I'd come to your door that night, I wouldn't have been able to walk away. My breath caught. And you needed to. Yes. There it was. Not because he didn't feel it. Because he did. We stood there. The hum of the building's air system the only sound. I hated you, I admitted. I know. And I tried really hard to forget you. His voice was almost a whisper. Did it work? I shook my head once. No. Something changed in his expression then. Not triumph. Not satisfaction. Relief. We can't do this again, I said quickly, stepping back, breaking the intensity before it swallowed me whole. You're my boss. I'm aware. And I worked too hard to get here. So did I. We stared at each other, the history still alive and pulsing between us. I'm not that guy anymore, he said finally. I'm not either. He nodded slowly. Good. Because if there was one thing I knew for sure, the version of us from 6 years ago had been reckless. This version, this one had power, careers, reputations, and way more to lose. But as I packed up my laptop and walked past him toward the elevator, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not closure. Not anger. Hope. And that scared me more than anything he'd said all night. After that night, everything shifted. Not visibly. If you'd walked into the office Monday morning, you would have seen the same thing as always. Jeffrey at the head of the conference table. Me presenting updated projections. The team nodding along. Professional. Controlled. Clean. But under the surface, it was different. We weren't pretending nothing happened anymore. We were pretending it didn't matter, which somehow was worse. The client pitch went well. Actually better than well. They signed a 3-month contract extension, which meant late nights, bigger budgets, and more visibility. Jeffrey pulled me aside after the meeting. Strong work, he said. You carried that room. Team effort, I replied automatically. He gave me a look. Don't diminish it. There was that tone again. The one that used to undo me. Calm, steady, direct. Thanks, I said, softer this time. He nodded once. We'll be traveling next week. Client's headquarters. My stomach dropped. Traveling. 2 days. You and me. Of course. HR approved it this morning, he added, almost like he anticipated my next thought. I wasn't worried about that. I lied. His eyebrow lifted slightly. I was, he said. That stuck with me. The flight was short, just over an hour. We barely spoke beyond work logistics. At one point, our arms brushed when turbulence hit. Neither of us moved immediately. The old version of me would have overanalyzed that for days. The current version just stared straight ahead and reminded himself, he's your boss. We checked into the hotel separately. 2 rooms, different floors, structured. That word again. Dinner with the client went smoothly. Jeffrey in his element was something else. Confident but not arrogant. Commanding without raising his voice. I watched him across the table, remembering what it felt like to be the only one he let see behind that composure. Back at the hotel, I planned to go straight to my room. Instead, my phone buzzed. Jeffrey, lobby bar. 1 drink. We should debrief. I stared at the message longer than necessary. 1 drink. That's how it always started. I went anyway. He was already there, jacket off, tie loosened slightly. A glass of whiskey in front of him. Didn't think you'd come, he admitted as I sat down. It's work, I said. Right? I ordered something light, gin and tonic. Safe. We talked about the presentation, the client's concerns, budget projections. Normal. Then the conversation thinned. You seem different, he said after a pause. Older. He almost smiled. Grounded. That's called therapy and bad dating experiences. He huffed a quiet laugh. Dating? Yeah, I said, meeting his eyes intentionally. I didn't freeze in time after you. I didn't assume you did. Good. A beat of silence. Anyone serious? He asked, tone neutral. Why? Curiosity. I studied him. No. He nodded slowly. You? He hesitated. No. That surprised me more than it should have. What happened to Melissa? I asked. She got married. To someone appropriate. Appropriate, I repeated. He rolled the word around like it tasted bitter now. Do you ever regret it? I asked quietly. He didn't pretend not to understand. Yes. The honesty hit deeper than I expected. Leaving? Yes. Or choosing wrong? He held my gaze. They're the same thing. The bar felt too quiet suddenly. I wasn't ready, he continued. Not for what you were asking without even saying it. I wasn't asking for anything, I said. You were, he replied softly. You were asking me to be brave. That landed straight in my chest. And you weren't. No. The simplicity of it almost hurt more than excuses would have. I took a slow sip of my drink. I'm not that scared anymore, he said. I looked at him carefully. Don't, I warned. I'm just stating a fact. You're my boss. I'm aware. And I worked too hard to rebuild my life to let it get messy again. His voice dropped slightly. What if it doesn't have to be messy? I laughed under my breath. That's naive. Is it? Yes. Because here's the thing about Jeffrey. He doesn't do casual. He does all or nothing. And last time, when it came down to it, he chose nothing. I won't jeopardize your job, he said firmly. Or mine. Good. But Eric, he added, leaning forward slightly, lowering his voice just enough that it wrapped around me. If I ever cross a line, you tell me. You don't disappear again. That stung. I didn't disappear, I said. You left without letting me explain. You'd already explained. I shot back. You just didn't like the way it sounded. We held eye contact for too long. The tension wasn't reckless anymore. It was heavier, slower, intentional. Come upstairs, he said quietly. My breath caught. Jeffrey, just to talk. That's what you said the first time. His jaw tightened slightly. I'm not playing games. I know, I whispered. That was the problem. I knew exactly what kind of man he was. Deliberate, focused. When he wanted something, he moved toward it steadily. And right now, he was moving toward me. I stood up slowly. I can't, I said. He didn't argue. He didn't push. He just nodded once. Okay. But the look in his eyes? That wasn't defeat. That was patience. And as I walked toward the elevator alone, my pulse racing anyway, I realized something unsettling. 6 years ago, he panicked and ran. This time, he wasn't running at all. And I wasn't sure which version of Jeffrey scared me more. I didn't sleep much that night either. Not because something happened, because nothing did. There's a specific kind of frustration that comes from walking away from something you want, knowing it was the right decision and still feeling like you lost. The next morning, I avoided him. Not obviously. I showed up to the final client session, contributed when needed, kept my tone neutral. But I didn't linger. On the flight back, he didn't sit next to me. I noticed that immediately. Structured. He was giving me space. And somehow that felt worse than if he'd pushed. Back at the office, things returned to routine. Deadlines, meetings, Slack notifications at all hours. Except now there was a steady undercurrent between us. Not flirtation. Awareness. 1 week passed. Then 2. No late-night texts. No private drinks. No blurred lines. If anything, Jeffrey became more professional than ever. Crisp, direct, detached. Started to irritate me, which was ridiculous. Isn't this what I wanted? Clarity, distance, control. So why did it feel like he'd shut something down before I'd even fully decided what I wanted? The answer came unexpectedly on a Thursday evening. I was in the break room, heating up leftover pasta, when Jenna walked in grinning. "Have you met Claire yet?" "Claire who?" I asked. "Jeffrey's friend. She stopped by earlier. Gorgeous. Like, intimidatingly gorgeous." My stomach tightened. "Friend." "Yeah, tall, blonde, powersuit energy." They looked close. Of course they did. I kept my expression neutral. "Cool. Apparently she just transferred from Chicago. He used to work with her." I nodded like this information didn't feel like a punch to the ribs. Used to work with her. Structured. Appropriate. Safe. The rest of the day dragged. At 6:30 p.m., most people filtered out. I stayed, pretending to revise numbers that didn't need revising. Through the glass walls of his office, I saw her. Claire. Jenna wasn't wrong. She was polished, confident, standing close to his desk, laughing at something he said. He looked relaxed, comfortable. Shouldn't have bothered me. We weren't anything. We hadn't been anything. But watching them together felt eerily familiar, like déjà vu with sharper edges. 6 years ago, I'd stood in a kitchen watching him laugh with Melissa. Now I was watching it through glass. History doesn't repeat itself. It rhymes. I packed up abruptly. As I walked past his office, he looked up. Our eyes met. He saw something on my face, because his expression shifted immediately. "Eric," he said, stepping out into the hallway. "You heading out?" "Yeah." He glanced back toward Claire, then back at me. "This is Claire, old colleague." "Hi," she said warmly, extending a hand. "Eric," I replied. Her grip was firm, assessing. "Jeffrey's told me a lot about the team," she said. "The team, of course." "That's good," I said evenly. Jeffrey's attention flicked between us. "You leaving already?" he asked me. "Yeah, got plans." He nodded once. "Good night, Eric." Something in the way he said it lingered. I left, but I didn't go home. I ended up at a small bar near my apartment, nursing a drink and trying to untangle what I was actually feeling. Jealousy? Maybe. But deeper than that, it was fear. Not that he'd choose someone else, but that he'd choose safety again. And I wouldn't survive watching that twice. My phone buzzed around 9:15 p.m. "Jeffrey, are you still out?" I stared at it, then typed back. "Me, why?" A minute passed. "Jeffrey, because you left like you were angry." I huffed a quiet breath. He still read me too easily. "Me, not angry." Another pause. "Jeffrey, then what?" I hesitated, then decided to stop pretending. "Me, I don't want to do this again." 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Disappeared. Reappeared. "Jeffrey, do what?" I exhaled slowly. "Me, watch you choose something easier." The response didn't come right away. 5 minutes. 10. I almost regretted sending it. Then, "Jeffrey, Claire is engaged." I blinked. "Me, oh." "Jeffrey, to a woman." That surprised me enough that I actually laughed. "Me, okay." Another message. "Jeffrey, she knows about you." My chest tightened. "Me, why would she know about me?" A longer pause this time. Then, "Jeffrey, because you weren't a distraction. You were the turning point." I stared at the screen. The bar noise faded around me. "Me, Jeffrey, Jeffrey." I didn't choose safety again. My pulse kicked up. "Me. Then what are you choosing?" This time, the response came immediately. "Jeffrey, you. If you'll let me." Everything in my body went still. 6 years ago, he hadn't been brave. Now, he wasn't hedging. He wasn't using vague words. He wasn't hiding behind structure. He was asking. And suddenly, the decision wasn't about him. It was about me. Did I trust that he'd changed? Did I trust that I had? My phone buzzed again. "Jeffrey," but not in secret. Not recklessly. And not if it costs you your career. My throat tightened unexpectedly. He'd thought about it. Actually thought about it. Another message. "Jeffrey, I can request a department reassignment. Remove the reporting conflict. It'll take time, but it's possible." I swallowed. He was already solving the problem. Not running. Not panicking. building structure around something instead of using structure to escape it. I typed slowly. Me, that's a big move. Jeffrey, so were you. My chest felt too tight. The bartender asked if I wanted another drink. I shook my head. No more numbing. No more waiting. I stood up. Me, where are you? The reply came fast. Jeffrey, still at the office. Of course he was. Structured. I walked out into the cool night air, heart pounding harder with every step. 6 years ago, I'd waited behind a closed door. This time, I wasn't waiting. I was walking straight toward him. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the reckless one. I felt like the one choosing something real. The office building looked different at night. Quieter. Almost honest. No chatter. No fluorescent buzz of productivity. Just dimmed hallway lights and the low hum of the air system. My footsteps echoed more than usual as I walked toward the elevators. I almost turned around twice. This was insane. 6 years ago, I'd been the one waiting in the dark for him to choose me. Now he was upstairs, waiting for my answer. The elevator ride felt longer than it was. When the doors opened, the floor was nearly empty. Only one office light was on. His, of course. He was standing by the window when I walked in, jacket off, tie gone entirely now, sleeves rolled up, city lights behind him. For a second, neither of us spoke. You came, he said quietly. Yeah. The word felt bigger than it should have. He didn't rush toward me, didn't close the distance. He just watched me like he was trying to gauge how fragile the moment was. I meant what I said, he continued, about reassignment. I won't put you in a position where people question your work because of me. I nodded slowly. That matters. It should. Silence settled between us, but it wasn't tense like before. It was cautious, like we were both aware that one wrong move could send this spiraling back into history repeating itself. I need to know something, I said finally. Okay. If this gets hard, if it complicates your career again, are you going to panic? His jaw tightened slightly, but he didn't look away. No, that's not enough, I said. I need more than a one-word answer. He exhaled slowly. I've spent 6 years building a life that doesn't depend on approval, he said. My family knows. My colleagues know. I stopped pretending. That hit me square in the chest. You're out? I asked. Yes. Since when? 3 years ago. I blinked. And you didn't? Call you? He finished gently. I nodded. I didn't think I had the right. That hurt in a different way. I thought about you, he continued, more than I should admit, but I assumed you'd moved on, that you deserved someone who didn't hesitate. I let that sit for a moment. I did move on, I said. Sort of. He waited. I dated. I tried. But I never felt what I felt with you. His expression softened, not smug, not triumphant, just relieved. I know that sounds dramatic, I added quickly. It doesn't. We stood there, years of unfinished emotion finally being spoken instead of swallowed. I don't want a secret, I said firmly. I don't want stolen moments and closed doors. You won't get that. And I don't want to be the only one risking something. You won't be. He stepped a little closer then, not touching. Just reducing the space between us to something human instead of corporate. I'm not asking you to jump, he said quietly. I'm asking if you're willing to try. Slowly. Correctly. Slowly. Correctly. God, he'd matured. I'm scared, I admitted. So am I. That surprised me. You? I asked. He gave me a faint smile. You're the only variable I've never been able to predict. 6 years ago, that would have felt like power. Now it felt like responsibility. I don't want to lose myself in you, I said. You won't, he replied immediately. And if you ever feel like you are, you tell me. I won't ignore it again. The way he said again mattered. He wasn't pretending the past didn't exist. He was acknowledging it. I hated how small I felt, I admitted quietly. Like I was too much for you. You were never too much, he said. I was too afraid. That landed deeper than any apology could have. I'm choosing you. No hesitation. No qualifiers. My chest tightened painfully. I need time, I whispered. You have it. I need to see the reassignment request go through. It will. And I need this to start outside these walls. He nodded. Dinner. Public. No secrecy. A slow breath left my lungs. Okay. The word felt terrifying. And right. His thumb traced lightly over my knuckles, like he was memorizing the permission. Can I kiss you? He asked. God, 6 years ago he never would have asked. Yes, I breathed. When his lips met mine, it wasn't about reclaiming something lost. It was about choosing something new. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the secret. I felt like the decision. When we finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead lightly against mine. We're doing this right, he murmured. Yeah, I said, a small smile breaking through despite everything. No more disappearing. No more running. Outside the window, the city kept moving. Inside that quiet office, so did we. Not recklessly, not in hiding, but forward. And for the first time since I saw his name in that email, I wasn't bracing for impact. I was ready for whatever came next. The reassignment took 3 weeks. 3 very long, very careful weeks. Jeffrey kept everything exactly as promised. He submitted the request through HR, documented the prior personal connection, and formally removed himself from any direct evaluation of my performance. It was handled clinically, professionally, structured, but outside of work, we started over. Dinner, like he said, public. A quiet restaurant 2 neighborhoods over where no one from the office would casually wander in. I showed up 10 minutes early because apparently I still overthink everything. He walked in right on time. No suit jacket. Dark sweater. Casual. Softer somehow. For a second, we just stood there, both clearly aware that this was our first real date. Not stolen. Not hidden. Not complicated by proximity and denial. You look nervous, he said gently as we sat down. I am. Good, he replied. Means it matters. I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't stop the small smile. Dinner was easy. That surprised me the most. We didn't dive straight into heavy emotional autopsies. We talked about what the last 6 years actually looked like. The messy parts. The lonely parts. The growth neither of us had been around to witness. He told me about coming out to his family. It wasn't dramatic, he said. Just uncomfortable. A lot of silence. But it's better now. I watched his face when he talked about it. There wasn't shame there anymore. No tightness behind the eyes. You would have hated the old version of me, he admitted at one point. I did, I said honestly. He nodded. Fair. And I wasn't exactly emotionally stable either, I added. I put you on a pedestal. You never should have. I know. There was something grounding about saying all of that out loud. No blame, just facts. When he reached for my hand across the table, he didn't hesitate. And neither did I. The reassignment was approved the following Monday. I moved to a parallel team under a different director. Same level. Same trajectory. No conflict of interest. Jeffrey sent me the confirmation email with no added commentary. Professional. Then, 10 minutes later, I got a text. Jeffrey, now I can officially ask you to dinner again. I stared at it, smiling like an idiot in the middle of the office. Me, you already did. Jeffrey, then I'm asking to keep going. That was the thing. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't pushing. He was staying. And staying is harder than wanting. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward moments. One particularly tense conversation when I admitted I still had this reflex to pull away emotionally when things felt too good. You don't trust it, he said quietly. I don't trust that it won't disappear. I won't, he replied. You can't promise that. He didn't argue. You're right, he said instead. I can promise I won't leave without fighting for it. That mattered more. We took it slow. Weekends together. Meeting friends. Letting our lives overlap gradually instead of collapsing into each other like we had before. And one night, about 2 months in, we ended up back at my apartment. Not because we were hiding. Because we wanted to be there. We stood in my kitchen. The same kind of space where everything had unraveled years ago. You okay? He asked softly. Yeah, I said, looking around. Just thinking about how different this feels. How? No tension about being seen. No countdown clock in the back of my head. He stepped closer. There's no expiration date this time, he said. Good. His hand came up to my face, slower than before. Not urgent. Not desperate. Certain. When he kissed me, it wasn't about proving anything. It was about building something. And I realized something in that moment. The version of Jeffrey I'd fallen for at 25 wasn't the man standing in front of me now. That one had been brilliant but scared. This one, still brilliant, but brave. And I wasn't the same either. I wasn't the guy waiting behind a door for someone to choose me. I was standing in the open, choosing back. 6 months later, HR forgot we'd ever had history. The office gossip cycle moved on to someone else's drama. Claire invited us to her engagement party. Life kept unfolding in very normal, very adult ways. And sometimes, late at night, Jeffrey will trace his thumb over my wrist the same way he did the first time he held my hand on that couch years ago. You ever think about how close we came to never doing this? He asked me once. Yeah, I admitted. And I looked at him, really looked at him. I'm glad you finally got brave. He smiled faintly. I'm glad you didn't stop being worth it. Here's the truth I never told anyone about back then. Loving him wasn't the mistake. Silence was. But we don't live there anymore. Now, when someone new joins the office and HR sends out one of those welcome emails, I don't flinch at names from the past. Because the only one that ever mattered is asleep next to me. And this time, he's not my boss. He's mine.